Daniel Harper almost skipped the bowling night. Work had drained him all week, and the idea of noisy lanes and rented shoes didn't excite him. But Emily insisted. She always did when she sensed distance between them. So there he was at Silver Strike Bowling Alley, tying laces that smelled faintly of cleaner, watching bright lights reflect off polished floors. Music played from overhead speakers, and families crowded the lanes, cheering and groaning with every roll. Emily stood near the scoring screen, laughing with two co-workers she'd invited last minute. She looked happy, lighter than she had all month. Daniel smiled at the sight. Then he noticed Margaret. Emily's mother waited beside the ball rack, holding a purple bowling ball as if she belonged there. She wore jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair pulled back neatly. She didn't look like someone's mother-in-law. She looked confident. Calm. Observant. "Daniel," she said, spotting him. "I grabbed one your size." He blinked. "Thanks. How'd you know?" She tapped her temple. "I pay attention." Emily waved from across the lane. "Don't let him cheat, Mom." Margaret chuckled. "I wouldn't dare." Daniel took the ball and felt its weight settle into his palm. When he stepped onto the lane, he sensed her eyes on his back. The ball rolled. Pins scattered. "Strike," someone shouted from the next lane. Margaret clapped softly. "Very nice." Daniel nodded, pleased. Emily headed toward the snack counter with her friends. "Drinks anyone?" "I'm good," Daniel said. Margaret stayed. For a moment, the noise around them faded into a low hum. "You look worn out," she said. "Long week. You push yourself too hard." He shrugged. "Someone has to." Her smile held longer than usual. "Emily is lucky." Something about that felt heavier than it should have. He shifted his stance. "She works hard too." "I know," Margaret said. "But you've always been steady." "That matters." "Always." He didn't remember telling her that much about himself. Emily called again from the counter, arguing over nachos. Margaret laughed, but her eyes didn't leave Daniel. "You two used to come here when you were dating, didn't you?" "Yeah. First year. She told me. She was crazy about you." Daniel smiled at the memory. "She still is. I think." Margaret studied him as if measuring that answer. "Marriage gets quiet sometimes," she said. He frowned. "Quiet isn't bad." "No," she agreed. "But people forget to be seen." The words landed closer to home than he liked. Emily returned with plastic cups of soda. "What did I miss?" "Your husband showing off," Margaret said easily. Daniel forced a laugh. When Emily went to check the scores, Margaret leaned closer. "You make people feel safe," she said. Her voice was low enough that only he could hear. He stepped back half an inch without thinking. "Thanks," he said, quick. The next frame started. The noise rushed back. Someone spilled popcorn. Kids yelled. Normal. But Daniel couldn't shake the strange tight feeling in his chest. He told himself it was nothing. Just family. Just a bowling night. Yet as he picked up another ball, he felt it again. The sense that something small had shifted. And he didn't know why that unsettled him so much. After that Friday night, Daniel tried to forget it. But Margaret's presence lingered in his mind like a shadow he couldn't shake. It started with texts. At first, they were simple, harmless. "How's work today?" she'd ask. "Emily mentioned you had a big meeting, hope it went well." He replied politely, sometimes including Emily, sometimes not. Then the texts became longer. Personal. Concerned. "You should rest more. Don't carry everything alone. Emily is lucky to have you." Daniel noticed how his heart beat faster when he read them, how he lingered over words he shouldn't have. He told himself it was fine. She was his mother-in-law. She cared. That's all. But every glance from her now felt heavier, loaded with an attention that made him uncomfortable and, oddly, pleased. At family dinners, he caught her staring a little too long. At holiday gatherings, she asked questions about him instead of Emily. He felt a quiet pull he couldn't explain. He hated it. But he couldn't ignore it either. One rainy afternoon, Emily stayed late at work. Daniel drove to Margaret's to drop off some papers Emily had left behind. She answered immediately, smiling like nothing had changed. "You shouldn't have," he said, but she waved him in. The smell of coffee and cinnamon filled the air. The rain tapped softly against the windows, making the room feel smaller, warmer. "You've been working too hard," Margaret said, setting the papers down. She gestured toward a chair. "Sit. Stay for a moment." He hesitated, then sat. They talked casually at first, movies, work, Emily's stress, but then the conversation drifted. "She's been distant lately," Daniel admitted quietly, unsure why he was saying it out loud. Margaret nodded, understanding. Sometimes people forget what they already have. They take it for granted. He looked at her, and something in her gaze felt uncomfortably intimate, soft and understanding in a way he wasn't used to. "You still make people feel important, Daniel." "That's rare," she said, her voice quiet. His stomach twisted. He stood, nervous. "I should go." Margaret's eyes followed him. "You know you can talk to me about anything." Daniel froze. He had no idea how to respond. He felt a pull toward her he didn't want, a longing he didn't understand. He left minutes later, rain soaking his coat. At home, Emily kissed his cheek as she scrolled her phone. "You're quiet," she said. "Just tired," he lied. He told himself he hadn't crossed a line. But the truth weighed on him. The texts, the conversations, the stolen moments, they were small, innocent maybe, but the emotional closeness was growing. Every day, he felt Margaret's attention lingering in his thoughts. Every word from her tugged at something in him, a curiosity and attraction he tried to ignore. By the end of the week, he realized something dangerous. This wasn't just kindness. Something had shifted. And Daniel knew, deep down, that if he wasn't careful, a simple friendship could become something neither of them could control. A quiet Sunday afternoon felt different. Emily had gone shopping with friends, leaving Daniel at Margaret's house to fix a loose cabinet hinge he had promised to repair weeks ago. He had thought it was just a favor. Margaret watched him from the doorway, arms crossed, calm and still. "You're good with your hands," she said. Daniel froze, wrench in hand. Her tone was light, almost teasing, but there was something in her voice that made his chest tighten. "Just a small repair," he muttered, focusing on the hinge. She stepped closer, her presence filling the room. "I've been lonely since my divorce," she said quietly. "The house feels too empty." Daniel glanced up, unsure how to respond. I'm sorry," he said. Margaret nodded slowly. "You remind me of stability," she said, voice soft. "Of what it feels like to be seen, really seen." He swallowed hard. The words caught in his throat. He knew she didn't mean harm, but the emotion in her voice was magnetic, drawing him in despite his resolve. Daniel set down the tools. "Margaret, we shouldn't." "I know," she interrupted, stepping closer, her eyes searching his face. "I would never want to hurt Emily. Or you." Her gaze held his, lingering longer than it should have. Daniel could feel the pull, the danger of something unspoken stretching between them. He wanted to step back, to leave, to erase the moment, but his feet felt heavy. This can't happen," he said finally, the words sharp. Margaret's eyes softened. "You've thought about it," she whispered. He didn't answer. He couldn't. The room fell silent, only the faint sound of rain tapping the windows breaking the tension. Margaret took a small step back, but not fully away. "I know boundaries are important. And I know this is wrong," she said quietly, almost to herself. But I can't ignore what I feel either. Daniel felt a jolt of fear. This was no longer harmless conversation, no longer just emotional closeness. Something deeper was stirring, something dangerous for everyone involved. He reached for the door. I should go, he said, voice tight. She nodded slowly. I understand. Daniel left, the air outside cold against his flushed face. Driving home, he replayed every word, every glance, every slight touch. Nothing physical had happened. Nothing should have happened. But it had. The emotional closeness, the shared moments, the intimacy of understanding, it had already crossed a line in his heart. At home, Emily hugged him when she returned, oblivious to what had transpired. Did you fix it? She asked brightly. Yeah, he said, trying to smile. But the lie tasted bitter. That night, Daniel lay awake, thinking about Margaret's words. About the pull, the longing, the way she looked at him. He knew he had to stay away, that boundaries must be kept. Yet the memory of that afternoon haunted him. He realized the truth, sometimes the line between innocent and dangerous isn't sharp. It's invisible, thin, and easy to cross without noticing until it's too late. And in that quiet house, on that rainy Sunday, Daniel felt the first real crack in the life he thought was simple, safe, and secure. Because emotional closeness can be more powerful than desire, and sometimes it comes from the people you least expect. 2 weeks later, the tension Daniel had tried to ignore exploded. Emily picked up his phone by accident while looking for her own charger. She froze when she saw the messages, long, late-night texts from Margaret. Nothing physical, nothing inappropriate in words, but too intimate, too personal. Concern, care, attention, lines crossed in a way that shook her. She confronted him in the kitchen that evening, her hands trembling. Why is my mother texting you at midnight? Daniel froze. He had no excuse that could sound right. It wasn't, he started, but she cut him off. Don't, she said sharply. Just, don't. Margaret arrived soon after, called by Emily. The three of them sat at the kitchen table, the air thick with silence. Emily's eyes were sharp, hurt clear in every line of her face. Did something happen? She asked softly, almost a whisper, but Daniel felt it pierce him. He opened his mouth, then closed it. How could he explain the emotional closeness that had grown, the tension, the pull, without making it sound like a confession of betrayal? Margaret spoke first. I crossed a boundary, she admitted quietly, her voice calm but heavy. Emotionally. I let feelings grow that should never have. Emily's shock was immediate. You what? She demanded, staring at her mother. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. I leaned on him too much. I let my loneliness blur the line. I never meant to hurt either of you. Daniel swallowed hard. I stopped it before it went any further, he said, voice low. But I should have told you immediately. Emily looked between them, her chest rising and falling with anger and sadness. So you were both pretending nothing was wrong? The question hit him harder than any words could. Pretending. Hiding. The secrecy was the betrayal. Emily stood abruptly. I need space, she said. Her voice shook. She left, slamming the door softly behind her. Margaret sat, silent, guilt written in every movement. Daniel didn't know what to do. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. He thought about the laughter at the bowling alley, the small touches, the texts, the quiet afternoons, they had all led here. Nothing physical had happened, but the damage was done. Emotional infidelity, unspoken, almost invisible, had cracked the foundation of their marriage. Weeks passed. Emily moved out temporarily, needing distance. Margaret withdrew from family events, leaving Daniel alone to think, replaying every interaction, wondering when the line had blurred. One evening, Emily returned. They sat together, tentative, fragile. I don't know what our future looks like, she said, voice trembling. Trust doesn't come back easily. Daniel nodded. I'll wait. As long as it takes. Tears fell down her cheeks. She whispered, "I loved that bowling night, before everything changed." Daniel held her hand gently. "I did too," he said. He realized something bitter and true: the most devastating betrayals don't always start with passion. They start with laughter, kindness, small gestures. They start when lines blur slowly, unnoticed, until suddenly, everything familiar is broken. And sometimes, the people you trust most, the ones you think are safe, are the ones who can hurt you the deepest. That night, Daniel sat quietly, holding Emily's hand, knowing the road ahead would be long. But he understood now that honesty, distance, and boundaries were fragile, essential, and life could change in a single, unexpected moment.